Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of the Fishing Teacher, and thanks a lot for checking out today's video. Much appreciated. Today we're going to have a little discussion on why it's difficult to catch big fish, and maybe some tips and advice on what you guys can do to help you guys catch a few more big fish, because I think there's very few things that's fun or just catching just a really big fish. I think everybody really likes it, so I'll give you guys some stuff I've learned over the years on that. So real quick guys, I just wanted to remind you about our weekly reminder about our Fish the Moment summer lake map breakdowns. You guys, I know a lot of the guys on the channel here are starting out, and we've got lake breakdowns of all the big lakes across the country, even smaller ones too. And these give you 40 GPS waypoints where to begin your search at, where you can duplicate it, tips and advice on how to fish each spot. And also, if the lake that you fish is not on our website, we can do a virtual lesson with me, and I can go over any lake that you fish with Navionics and Google Earth and give you guys a good foundation for that. So I'll put the Fish the Moment lake map breakdown in the description of this video. Much appreciated. Okay guys, first of all, why are big ones so hard to catch? Bass didn't, big fish are smart, because bass, they have so many different obstacles they have to overcome just to get to be like 10 inches long. I mean, do you guys realize how much the odds are stacked against the bass from the time they hatch out of their eggs to just reach 10 or 12 inches long? The odds are just millions to one. So when a bass gets big, and I consider a big bass anything over 4 pounds. That's, in my opinion, a 4 pound plus bass is truly a large bass. They're just difficult to catch. They're a lot harder to catch, and a lot of this has to do, I think, with the fact that it's just like people. Some people are more aware, some people are a little smarter than others, some people are just a little bit more keen. And I think it's the same way with bass. I think there's some bass that, for whatever reason, they've got the genetics or whatever just to be able to decipher and make better decisions, and analyze if stuff is real or not. So from that standpoint, I think that's one part of it. And the second part of it is, I think big fish live in areas most of the year that people don't fish. In my opinion, big fish they live in two different type of areas. They either live in deeper open water areas, and they just cruise around out in open water. That's why you're seeing a lot of these guys that live scope catch so many big ones now, because they're tapping into some of those fish that have been protected for ever since we've been fishing, just out there roaming around. And then the other ones live in heavy cover a lot of times. Now, one of the reasons I do know, even before live scope, that big fish lived out just roaming in the middle of the lake is, I've talked to a bunch of old dudes that all they do is troll, and they've trolled since the 1950s, and they tell me about occasionally catching a really big bass just trolling out there for white bass or whatever. So I think a lot of those fish live in areas of the lake, whether it be heavy cover or deep open water, that they're simply uncatchable. A prime example, guys, would be, look at a boat dock. Now, boat docks come in different sizes and shapes, but say for example, if you see a fairly large dock, like one of those marina docks, look how easy it would be for a bass to get around that dock, say in the middle of the dock, where nobody can ever reach them. There's no way you can get a lure to those fish. There's maybe boats in the slips and lifts and that type of stuff, and these fish live their entire life protected by that dock. They never get to the edges. They stay right there and just feed on perch and crappie and whatever around those docks. So those are the two reasons, in my opinion, why big bass are difficult to catch. Now, what can you do to catch big ones, as far as catching them? First of all, most of the big fish you're going to catch are going to come in what's called the pre-spawn, before, when the fish start coming out of their winter patterns and before they start spawning. This is when there's more big fish up shallow than any other time of the year. And simply because there's more big ones up during the pre-spawn period before they start spawning, that's when people catch most of their big fish. You can catch them all year long, but I'm gonna say that probably 75% or 80% of the big fish people catch are during the pre-spawn time of the year, and they're a lot more vulnerable that time of year. So one of the biggest things you can do is focus a lot of your efforts fishing like in February, March, early April. That's a good time to catch big ones. Second thing is that if you're going to catch big ones, you have to fish for big ones. And the old adage that big fish like big baits is true. There's an upside and a downside to that. Yeah, that's true that big baits produce big fish, but they also produce very few bites. So if you go to a really big bait, you're going to cut your odds down on getting strikes tremendously with that. So it's sort of a commitment with that as far as going big with that. Another thing about big fish is that there are certain windows of the time that big ones usually bite. And one of the things that I found out about bass fishing, guys, and sort of like against what people say, is that I've caught most of my big fish between like 10 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a lot of guys that like to fish. I got to get out there early in the morning and get that early morning bite. I haven't found that to be true. I found that those big fish will hit pretty much in the middle of the day, regardless when you're fishing. Now, the other time of year that I've caught some big ones is during the late post spawn. The late post spawn is usually about a month or so after most of the bass have spawned. So say, for example, if you think a lot of the fish have spawned, in the first week of May in your lake like that, normally by like the first week of June, you're getting into the tail end of the post spawn. And what happens there is you have a lot of those bigger fish, they start to school up. And big ones will school up like on the ends of points and on ledges and that type of stuff. And you can catch them like on deep diving crankbaits or football head jigs or big plastic worms, something like that. But overall, like I said, and one other thing I will talk about big fish, you got to fish a lake that's got a lot of big fish in it, because most guys that catch giant bass, like 10 pounders, they either live in Texas, Florida, or California. And if you live around the rest of the part of the country like I do, we just don't have that many big fish in our lakes. I mean, most of the tournaments around here in Missouri, 5 or 6 pounds wins a big bass in a large tournament. So don't feel bad if you're not catching giants, because all you dudes living in California and Texas and Florida, you don't realize how spoiled you are, because if you went anywhere else, you're not going to catch those giants like you do down there. So the lake that you fish, as far as how many big ones it has in it, has a lot to do with your odds of catching a big one too. So anyway, guys, hope that helps out. We'll talk later. See you.